Well, isn't this a fun little outing? For some bizarre reason, the agency has decided they need me for something other than the maintenance and surveillance of the animatronic village. I suppose I can't complain, as it is quite nice to escape that wretched office, even if it is just getting replaced with another for the next few nights. I've come to expect that the only thing the agency will pull me away for is if they need me to do some undercover work, specifically if that undercover work involves uncovering if a company is suspected of harboring possessed animatronics. Which, as strange as it might sound, is quite commonplace for my line of work. Huh. The operative lifted his arms towards his face and tapped the screen of a slim, futuristic looking watch. He did this a few times before his face became illuminated by a blue glow. He held in the two buttons, one on either side of the screen, and spoke into the device in an agitated tone. Ashton Barkley, calling in from the Pokeplex? Remind me again, why am I here exactly? What are the terms of this mission, and why do I have a feeling every animatronic I come into contact with here is a knockoff of a creature from a very specific anime and/or game? A series of bars floated up from the screen, each of different lengths, and interchanged as another, more feminine voice rang out from the device to answer Barkley's questions. To be honest, Ashton, I don't get the reference, but I can indeed remind you of what your mission entails. Your objective at the Pokeplex is to keep an eye out for any unusual or anomalous activity or happenings around or within the location. You must make an attempt to analyse all animatronics on site and determine if they are indeed possessed by spectrals, as we suspect they are. Please be warned, the site has a reputation for having the largest collection of animatronics in the world, and has even been nicknamed the Animatronic Zoo, much to the owner's dismay. But this means it will be a lengthy mission for you, and you will be away from your regular post for longer than we would like. We've pulled some strings and have got you inside the location working as a night guard, and in theory you could carry this undercover investigation on for months, but we don't have that kind of luxury. We have seen advertisements for an auction being held by the owner, one Sato Tajira, to sell a large number of the animatronics at the location. We can't afford the machines being moved until we have had a chance to inspect them, and you're our best man when it comes to identifying spectrals. Barkley sighed, knowing they were stalling. Get on with it, how long have I got to identify them? 5 nights, unfortunately. He tensed for a moment, clenching his jaw and gritting his teeth, before letting out a groan and continuing the conversation. So I've got 5 nights to figure out how many of the animatronics are possessed, or is it a case of the agency repossessing the entire lineup if there is evidence at the end of the 5 days? The higher-ups have said that you are to try and get an accurate number, but if it reaches double digits, we will place operatives in the auction halls to purchase all of the machines. And as always, I assume there will be radio silence after this transmission, to ensure the Foundation doesn't catch wind? The woman replied with a sigh and a single word. Yes. I'll see you in 5 days, Serena. The watch's light ceased, and the only sound as he stood in the empty car park was that of the tapping of rainfall against the asphalt. He watched on, staring at the stadium-sized location where he would be spending the next 5 nights, water dripping from the tips of his sodden hair, and his eyes narrowed, like he was attempting to interrogate the building itself. He then whipped a padded hood over his head and jogged towards the building, acting like he had been desperate to escape the weather. When he reached the glass door to the building, Sato was waiting. He was a tall, slender man of 30 years old. He was born to a wealthy family in Japan, but decided to move west in the hopes of making a name for himself. He dressed well, standing in a pristine black suit with a lapis tie, and his shoes shone with polish. With all of this, though, the most memorable thing about him was his smile, stretching from cheek to cheek with a joy that was almost contagious. He held his hand out in anticipation. "Hello there! You must be the new night guard." When Barkley shook Sato's hand, he was shocked by the man's grip. For someone with such a light frame, Sato was surprisingly strong. "Yes, I assume you are Sato Tajira, owner and creator of this establishment?" I am indeed, and I'm ecstatic that you will be working with us. Are you ready for the tour of the facilities and to meet some of our creations in person? Sato answered quite spryly. Lead the way, I look forward to seeing my office. They walked into the open foyer. The building was 3 stories high, so the space was framed with balconies lined with doorways to the numerous themed sections of the location. There were some based on elements such as water, fire, and ground, whereas others seemed to be named after mythical creatures like dragons or fairies. Each doorway was decorated accordingly. The fire-themed section had LED torches lit on either side, whereas the water section appeared to have a doorway that was constructed to be a tunnel of water, and even had fish swimming between the intricate series of tubes. Barclay's jaw dropped at the size and stature of the building. It hadn't looked this large or complex from the outside, and the addition of the numerous sections only fueled the concern that he had about the mission. He slowly turned his head, first to the left, then to the right, taking in each distinct section of the complex, eyes wide, before turning back towards Sato, who was just smiling again. Oh, I see you didn't realize the building was this complex, Sato said, acknowledging the shocked look on Barclay's face. But you have no need to worry about keeping an eye on every location. Many of the themed areas are being built in preparation. As I'm sure you have heard, we are having an auction this Saturday, which is essentially to fund the construction of the site and more animatronics. Really, all we need you to worry about is keeping an eye on the entrances and exits of the building, to make sure no intruders get in and none of our assets get out. We believe the night guard position is one of the most important positions in the business and... Hold on a second, what exactly do you mean by none of the machines getting out? Barclay cut him off, expecting he might get some answers pretty quickly, pretending not to know anything about the possessed animatronics he had dealt with in the past missions. Oh, it was just a joke. We aren't haunted or anything. I just mean if intruders do get into the building, they will attempt to steal some of the assets. We have had a few people attempt this in the past, with varying levels of success. In that moment, Barclay wanted to strike out at Sato, thinking to himself, surely the man isn't that selfish and stupid that he knows about these things and thinks that they should be removed from the facility. Not to mention some of the animatronics must have already attempted to escape in the past, and the fact that people have almost certainly been killed by these things. It explains the disappearances around the area, I suppose. Ah, good one, sir. You almost had me for a second. Continuing, they toured through the 3 floors of the building. As Sato had said, many of the sections were under construction, with furniture covered in plastic sheets, paint buckets on the ground, and tools left on workbenches. It was almost a relief for the operative, but he didn't want to let his guard down just yet. Sato did, however, show Barclay into a section labelled Fossil Forest, which is where he came into contact with the first of the many animatronics that were in this place. At first glance, there was something familiar about the animatronic. It was something Barclay remembered from his childhood, but he let the thought pass. The animatronic itself was strange in appearance. It was clearly based on an extinct creature known as an Archaeopteryx, of which was believed to be the closest descendant to birds at the time it roamed the earth. However, with that being said, this beast of a machine was much larger than the original creature, standing at roughly 4 feet and sporting a blue, red and yellow colour scheme. The head arched into a beaked shape, plastic feathers decorated the arms and shoulders, and the tail was made up of multiple segments that gave it a wide range of movement. What else was strange about the design was that this animatronic had very little in the way of wings, and in place of them had long, wide arms that were of a similar length to a full-grown adult man. It was perched on a comedically large branch, balancing on 2 short legs, and had a simple series of motions it looped through, looking left to right before lifting its arms in the air, flapping them frantically and squawking. By looking at this, Barclay couldn't be certain of any animatronic possession. This isn't by any means the best animatronic we have at the location, it's just one of the first we ever designed, as you can probably tell, but I'm sure you will get to know each of them very well over the next few nights. Again, they walked through the facility and past a chained-up door that led to a basement. Barkley could have sworn that he heard the door being pounded on from within, and was going to ask Sato what that was about. In a stern voice, Sato gave him his answer before he could even ask. "What you've just heard is a draft. Nothing more," before continuing to smile. "But anyway, here is your office." For such a big building, the office space was pretty small. A 3 by 3 meter square room with a desk, locker, and fridge in the corner. The doorways were on either side of the desk and were fitted with shutters. On the wall above the desk was a series of 4 monitors currently showing footage from varying locations in the building. The walls themselves were a light grey, with varying posters left behind by the previous guards planning their vacations, if they weren't killed before they had a chance to go on them. Sato lifted the sleeve of his jacket to look at his watch. "Anyway, if that is all, I should be heading home. Please enjoy your first night here, and I will see you again tomorrow night to see how it was." He laughed hesitantly. "Good luck." Barkley watched on the monitors as the man's calm walk became a full panicked run to the front door. He raced away, locking the doors behind him. "Okay, first things first, I'm going to open that door to the basement." The space was eerily quiet as he walked towards the basement door, but as he moved, he rummaged through his pockets, looking for a small black case with various tools inside. "I can't just cut the chain or they'll know I've been down here." He continued to walk towards the chained-up door, but this time the tapping on the door was a more vigorous pounding that shook the chains with every smack. The only reason Barkley wasn't backing away was because he had to know if it was a person or a machine. "Hello, who's in there? Do you need help?" The panic fell silent, but no voice came through to answer the question. He opened the case and pulled out a lockpick, hesitantly looking around for any sign of movements before he continued. With a few twists of the pick, there was a click, and the lock fell to the ground with a clank. "Give me a second, I'm going to get you out." As he grabbed one side of the chain to pull it through the door handles, he had no time to back away. The doors were flung open and the chain flicked up, striking Barkley in the face. He was thrown up into the air with a scream before sliding along the wax surface that was the floor. He scrambled back up, holding his right eye as he watched on in horror. Stomping through the doorway was a large, bulky, intimidating animatronic. Its plating was primarily grey but did have sections of red, black and gold. It had 4 arms, 2 that were in the usual place, but the other 2 connected to the body from the back. It stood at 8 feet and its hands were huge, clearly designed to appear like some kind of wrestler. It was monstrous, loosely appearing humanoid and had 2 glowing red eyes. The only thing that was giving Barkley any hope of surviving was that it was one of the older, slower models. In a heartbeat, the operative ran towards the nearest section of the building, which so happened to be an abandoned project labelled the Haunted Halls. In that moment, he didn't care where he was going, only that he had to escape the robot before it could get its 4 hands on him. Barkley stormed through the entrance, snagged his coat on the doorway and had to leave it behind, leaving a trail for the wrestler animatronic to follow. This section of the building, according to Sato, was built as a Halloween attraction for some of the old fans of the Pokeplex, designed to look like a long corridor of doorways, twists and turns that form a labyrinth. Some of the doors were just there for decoration, but others led to horror attractions containing ghost-themed animatronics that would scare the visitors. He also said the majority of the animatronics had been removed from this section of the building and had been sold off due to a better offer to the company. The wrestler continued chasing him, but was smashing into the walls of the narrow corridor. After turning a few corners, Barkley realised he was far enough to try one of the doors, hoping it would be one of the empty horror attractions. The door handle twisted and clicked. With a push, the door opened into a room decorated to look like a graveyard. The floor was replaced with fake grass. There was comedic gravestones with the face of various cartoon characters on them, and the ceiling had been painted a deep blue to represent the night sky. The most noteworthy element of the room was a giant solitary tree that sat in the centre, with 2 huge branches and a hole near the top of its trunk. Cautious, Barkley waited for the wrestler to pass. Hearing the loud thumping footsteps coming towards the door, and then receding as it continued to walk past. He could have sworn the robot roared in frustration, but couldn't be certain. In the moments following, he breathed a sigh of relief and whispered to himself, "I'm such an idiot for opening the door. What was I thinking, and why didn't I recognise that the pounding on that door was far too loud to have been coming from a human? I have spent way too much time around machines." There was a groaning, like metal rubbing against metal, and it drew his attention back towards the solitary tree. Still cautious, he walked up the hill. Whether it was his imagination or not, he felt the ground moving beneath his feet. He slowly stepped over the graves, trying not to make any more sound than necessary, and began to inspect the tree. The bark felt rubbery against his fingers. It was easily 12 feet tall and was bolted to the ground. It appeared as though its branches and roots had hinges and bent at angles rather than natural forming curves. He then noticed that there were cracks in the ground below the tree, certain that they were created by impact. On closer look, he even noticed that the trunk split into 3 distinct sections. The roots were on the bottom, the branches the second, and the hole was in the third. It was only in that moment that he saw one of the most common signs that a spectral had taken possession. The wires had been severed, but the branches had begun to move. The body of the tree opened up at each of its segments, revealing rows of flat, metallic teeth. The arms lunged down to grab Barclay, and the whole machine, although bolted to the ground, writhed and struggled. Desperate to escape the room, desperate to get its hand on the operative. No matter how hard it tried, it couldn't pull away from the surface. Then the light came on from the hole in the top segment. It was the eye socket, but all that was left was the light from behind the eye. The sad thing was that it was flickering on and off, as though the spectral inside was starting to fade and give up. Calm down, I can help you, but you have got to let me near you to do so. You've been bolted to the floor because they didn't know you were alive. Please try and be quiet. I know that it might be painful for you. I've spoken to spectrals before, and they have told me how your feelings become attached to all the metal that you are welded or bolted to. Unfortunately, I haven't got my tools at the moment, but I promise I will bring them tomorrow night and I will remove the constraints on you. The machine tried to be quiet after that, but all the screaming and writhing had already drawn the attention of something else in that sector of the building. There was grotesque laughter coming from the corner of the room, followed by laughter by 3 other sources. Barclay, more intrigued because he had never heard of a spectral laughing before, watched the far corner of the room, of which was shrouded in shadow. From it came the glowing of not 1 but 4 sets of eyes, all floating and moving around like orbs. As the tree and Barclay watched, they saw 3 sets of eyes changing positions drastically without overlapping, but the one pair remained fixed on both of them. Purple smoke began pouring out from the shadow. It was similar to dry ice, keeping close to the ground, never coming up more than 2 feet above the surface. Following this was a 6-foot, purple, cat-like animatronic whose face covered the front of its body. It had 3 clawed hands and short, stubby legs. It took a couple steps before looking up with a creepy, smiling expression. All openings of its body were streaming with loose or cut wires. The other set of eyes came from the 3 orb-like animatronics that were floating around this beast. They were solid black in colour, but had holes in the back of them that produced the purple smoke. They were rapidly darting around the room, still laughing, as the purple cat animatronic began running towards them. After a few steps, the robot pounced, claws outstretched, orbs floating around it, shrieking like a banshee, towards the operative. He rolled out of the way, leaving the beast to crash into a gravestone. He tried again, to the same result, until it ordered the orbs to attack Barclay, mouths open wide, teeth bared, smoke billowing from them, now beginning to fill the room. This time the beast hid in the smoke and cackled as it pounced again. Barclay shouted through the room, "Come and get me! Both of you, I'm right here!" before ducking towards the entrance once more. When he managed to open the door, the wrestler animatronic almost knocked it off its hinges. The room was billowing with smoke to the point that both animatronics had been fighting each other, unaware that they was doing so. Barkley didn't stay around to watch it, and ran back in the direction of his office.